They'll say, well, we know what he's going to say because he says the same thing all the time. So part of my job is to keep you guessing what am I going to say next. So we'll see how that goes. For example, my wife had she made a mistake this week that she wasn't happy with. So I tried to explain to her and comfort her that sometimes you just need to embrace our mistakes. So she came over and gave me a big hug. 48 years from making the same mistake. So the way to understand this message today is we see the world through a lens, whatever our perspective is. First, the big lens, like the view of the world from 30,000 feet, what's the big picture? Then I'll narrow that lens to a particular person who lived during this particular time, who was Jesus, and then a particular message that he gave at a particular moment in time. So the lens will narrow. First of all, the big picture, none of us alive right now would trade places with anyone who lived in first century Palestine. Trust me. Oppressed, really oppressed. Poor, really poor. We still get 3 meals a day. We still have roofs over our head. We drive around in nice vehicles. We have a lot of mobility. We still have a say. We still can vote. How much you think it counts is another matter. But we still have a lot of freedom. Things have really changed since first century Palestine. I would consider that or classify it as an oligarchy. We've heard that word recently because the Russian oligarchs will hold a lot of power because of their wealth. Well, there were 3 elements at that time, or 3 different people that controlled Palestine. One was the Herodians, Herod. They were brutal. They killed their own family. They murdered children and their wives. One cut off the head of John the Baptist. But they had power. The other was the Sanhedrin, Pharisees and Sadducees, who oppressed their own people with their ridiculous laws about what you couldn't do and couldn't do. And they didn't like what you did or couldn't do, they'd strictly throw you aside. If you were poor, you stayed poor. If you were lame, you stayed lame. No medicine. The average lifespan, you know what the average lifespan was? 38 years. 38. But that was skewed because of infant mortality rates that were like 30%. So it was skewed by that. People lived into their 50s and 60s. But it was a horrible time for that. The other element, of course, was the Romans. Pontius Pilate, ruled with an iron fist. They call it Pax Romana. Pax Romana meant if there was trouble, they just eliminated it with the sword. It was military. So these 3 groups, Herod, because Herod was kept in power because the Romans allowed him to stay in power because he collected taxes from the Jewish people, which they didn't want to do. So he did it, hired his own people like Matthew. And the Sanhedrin stayed in power because people just felt they had to listen to their laws to be holy. So it was the power of a few controlled the many. So they see this Jesus coming into their lives. And Jesus was magnificent. Magnificent. The people listened to him. He could heal. He spoke with authority. He spoke against truth. He spoke truth to power. And they loved him for it. And they expected him to lead them in a kingdom on earth. They expected him to restore Israel to its original throne. Of course they misunderstood him. But who wouldn't want that they'd such a great, magnificent person that they could follow him all the way and change the political and social and economic way in which they live. In fact, that's the first sort of connected this and not misunderstand it. I didn't think it was something I made up, which I wouldn't. That's what I read from Luke 24:19 through 21. So this was Jesus. After the resurrection, he said to them, what things? They were talking, so he says, what things? So they said to him, these are the two men passing by on the road to Emmaus. He says, the things concerning Jesus of Nazareth. So they're talking about Jesus, because they hadn't seen him yet since his death. Who was a prophet, mighty in deed. He could also feed them. Many people followed Jesus because he fed them. And word before God and all the people. And now the chief priests and round rulers delivered him to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we were hoping that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. That's what his hope was in him. Their expectations were high, but different than what he had ever planned. But he knew that. So even in our own troubled world, we look to someone to help us out of our mess. And we so much want someone or some leadership group to do it. And not that it's a mess like the time of Jesus, but many of us aren't that happy with the way things are going, or are unsatisfied because of this or that, or feel incomplete. And so we expect and hope for the best, but it doesn't always happen. So in the middle of all of this, the one who they thought would be the king of Israel, I'll read a little bit of Matthew. Just to give you the understanding of how many people followed this man for a while. Eventually they would desert him. But at the height of his message and his teaching and his preaching, the multitudes followed. For as far as Syria and beyond the Jordan and into Judea, all around Jerusalem, it says right here, so Jesus went about all through Galilee. This is verse 23 in Matthew 4. Teaching in their synagogues, preaching. He taught and he preached. And we preachers do a little both. Sometimes when I preach, I teach. Sometimes when I teach, I preach. It just happens. And I haven't figured out which is which yet. Maybe you can. So, only kidding. And healing all kinds of sickness and all kinds of disease among the people. Then his fame went throughout all of Syria. They brought to him all sick people who were afflicted with various diseases and torments, those who were demon-possessed, epileptics, paralytics. He healed them. Great multitudes, verse 25, great multitudes followed him from Galilee and from the Decapolis. The Decapolis is a surrounding area where Jews still, remember he's preaching to the Jews, that the Jews still lived. Jerusalem, Judea, and beyond the Jordan. And seeing these multitudes, he went up on a mountain. It's really like a big hill. It's now called the Mount of Beatitudes. He might have been 1,000 feet high. Maybe he was 100 feet, 200 feet above the people. And I love this part. I think oftentimes we think Jesus always preached standing up like this. We have this big image of Jesus. What does it say here? He sat down and he talked. Now I'm not big into drama. I'm not. Is that right, Andy? Right. But I'll do something for effect. So again, their expectations are high. And maybe they're expecting his keynote address. Jesus is going to tell us how we can follow him. He's going to lead us to take over the temple. He'll set up his throne and will restore Israel. Here's what he says. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for yours is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you that mourn, for you shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for you shall inherit the earth. Blessed are you when you hunger and thirst for righteousness' sake, for you will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for you will receive mercy. Blessed are you when you're pure in heart, for you shall see God. Blessed are you when you are a peacemaker, for you'll be called the sons of God. And blessed are you when you're persecuted for righteousness' sake, for yours is the kingdom of heaven. And then if you read the scriptures, he went on and on. For in the scriptures, it's 3 chapters. If you have a red letter edition, it's the biggest place in the Bible that's covered with red letters. And you know what? Jesus in his life explained many things. He explained the parable of the sower. He explained his suffering. He explained his resurrection and his ascension. But they didn't understand it, but he still explained it. He explained the last days as best he could that we could understand. He explained it. We don't totally understand it even now, but he gave them enough information to know there would be last days. So he explained many things to them about his ministry. But you know what he didn't explain? He did not explain these Beatitudes. He identified them with the people. He says, I'm your God. I am your person. But not politically. I'm what you need to become. You need the Beatitudes about what we need to become. Not what we even hope to be. Well, what we hope to be, but he identified with them so much that all of us know what it means to mourn. All of us knows what it means to feel meek in the world. Life can humble us. All of us know what it means to hunger and thirst for justice. All of us know what it means to need mercy. All of us know how much we want peace, and how blessed it is when we can make peace among families, friends, relatives, neighbors. One time, early in my ministry, I was troubled about my life. Because to me it got too complicated. I had a wonderful ministry, but I also had a secular job. I was trying to bring up a family and put bread on the table. So I actually went to see a counselor because it was confusing to me trying to do all these different things. I felt my focus wasn't there, and I was losing my grip on all those things. Was my ministry effective? Was I effective as a father? Was I even effective in the job I was doing in business? So I went to see a counselor, recommended, and she had a sense of spirituality and Christianity. I'm not saying she was born again Christian, but she had a sense about it. So after I told her, we sat down and she listened really well, and I told her my story, what was going on in my life, and I think at that time I'm about 38, approaching 40 years old. And she looks at me and she says, you should be so grateful to have such a magnificent life. You should be so grateful to have such a life that touches so many people. And I think that's what Jesus wants to tell us in the Beatitudes. you should be so grateful that I am with you, and I'll show you the way. And you can be this kind of person. If you journey through life and you walk with me, and you listen to me, and you want to be part of my kingdom, you will be this kind of person. You can make peace. You can comfort those that hurt. You can be merciful. You can inherit the earth. Because people like us are people that go to church, and people that understand his life. The earth is ours. The powerful people think they have it, but they don't. It's our earth. It's the people's earth. They can't take it from us. We don't let them take it from us. This is his blessing. This is his life. That's why he died for us. And died for them. And so anyone that sees it and identifies with it and knows that this is the person they want to be, doesn't need, I can spend, and you wouldn't want me to today because it would take a while. But it'd be easy for me, but I won't, because I'm not need to explain everyone. We could discuss every single one of those Beatitudes as a sermon and as a discussion room, and what it means to you personally. And I think every single one of us means something to a little different personally. And in my own life, maybe in yours, if you still read the scriptures, and God bless you, I hope you do. When you read them before, when I read them, and I read them all through my life. Oh, by the way, every time I read them, especially when years escape, they become more meaningful, more powerful in a different way. One might mean more now than it did then, and one might mean more then than it does now. But I want to tell you something else, how great these Beatitudes are. Other than in the Bible, other than the Lord's Prayer, John 3:16, that Beatitudes is the greatest message that Christ ever gave. The only thing read more in the whole Bible itself is the 23rd Psalm. That's read by many people. Just recently I read where in the Muslim faith, the imams, their clergy, are using the Beatitudes for a lesson group for their people as to how to conduct yourself in the world. How to conduct yourself in the world. Queen Elizabeth at her coronation had the Beatitudes read. Mahatma Gandhi followed them. Augustine loved them. Constantine, who's responsible for the fact that Christianity was approved as the national religion of the Roman Empire, which is an interesting story in itself. But Constantine, when he read the Beatitudes, said, I'm convinced. And he was converted into Christianity. And that changed the world. Because no longer were the Christians, well, it was already happening. They weren't persecuted so much. They weren't burned at the stake. They weren't put to the sword. So the Beatitudes and that teaching changed history, our history. And it's still changing. And if you do yourself a favor, pick one you like the most. Pick one. And say it to yourself every day. I'm a peacemaker. One quick story, and I'll close. And peacemaking is definitely possible among groups. I'm not talking in nations. That's beyond me and beyond us. But I remember a family discussion. I think you were there, Andrew. I'm picking on him. He probably won't come back now. That's my youngest son. He'll come back. Gotta get John here, though. We need to get John. He has two lovely daughters. They gotta come some Sunday right in.
Are you gonna ask for the chair now with the congregation for the rest of the sermon?
What do you want me to do? No, we're gonna have a hymn in a minute. Trust me. So, where was the story? I got it. So it was a family discussion, and I was getting a little heated during the discussion. I mean, a little heated. Didn't like where everything was going, and my voice elevated. And my daughter-in-law was sitting on this side of me, my right side. She could sense that. And she's a beautiful girl, you know that, Laura. So Lori, just when this is happening, she just touched my arm. How much that meant to me. She just told me, calm down. You'll be all right. That's all you have to do many times. Just calm the person. She let me know she still loved me. She didn't know me that well at the time, and she didn't like the fact my voice was elevated. So she wanted me to chill. She touched me. Do it. Love people. Calm them down. It's not the end of the world. Let's pray for them. Lord, thank you for being with us and being so kind and being so loving. Thank you for these beautiful people and their commitment to one another in this church, how much it means to them. Help them to keep praying, loving, sharing, being kind, being peacemakers, and working for what is just and right in the world. In Jesus' good and holy name, amen. So we'll stand together and sing our hymn, which is the closing hymn.